Welcome everyone to today's webinar on safe and savvy online shopping. My name is Nelson Santiago and I'm so glad that you all joined us today. I don't know about you, but I can't believe how fast this year has gone by and how quickly the holiday shopping season is here. And along with the holiday season, as we'll hear about today, 'tis also the season for scammers to come after us with all their might. For this reason, we couldn't think of a better time to offer this webinar. Today, we will also be joined by Ana Flores, Consumer Actions Executive Director. Ana will be leading the question and answer segment after we hear from our expert speakers. So make sure to use the question function in the GoToWebinar control panel to submit your questions. We'll get to as many of them as we can today. Now, a few of you might be planning to ask about whether we're going to make slides available, a recording link, and information on continuing education units. I'll answer that now. We will provide all of these things within about a week, so watch your inbox. Now, before we move into the main program, I want to acknowledge our sponsor for today's webinar. Consumer Action is able to present this webinar today thanks to funding from Amazon. We are very thankful for Amazon's support of our consumer education work over many years. Now, moving right into the program then for today, I'm excited to tell you that the three amazing subject matter experts that you now see on screen will be our presenters today. We will first be hearing from Melissa Trumpauer. She's the Executive Director of the Better Business Bureau Institute for Marketplace Trust. Mel, as she likes to be called, serves as the primary spokesperson for the international organization, speaking at conferences and to the media regarding the Better Business Bureau Institute initiatives and research aimed at building marketplace trust and empowering consumers and businesses to protect themselves from fraud. As a fraud prevention advocate, she has co-authored several research reports, including the BBB Scam Tracker Risk Report, the BBB Online Purchase Scams Report, and the BBB Employment Scams Report, and the new Online Scams Report. So I'm sure we're going to hear all about that from Mel. Mel is also going to share some enlightening research results showing how online shopping scams are impacting consumers, and she will offer us plenty of takeaways for staying safe. After Mel, we're going to hear from John Braille. John is the Vice President of Public Policy, Telecommunications, and Fraud for the National Consumers League. He's a nationally recognized consumer advocate with more than 20 years of experience championing the rights of consumers and the underserved. At the National Consumers League, he advocates for strong consumer protections before Congress and federal agencies on issues related to technology, fraud, data security, privacy, aviation, live event ticketing, video gaming, and more. John's going to talk to us about holiday shopping scam trends and offer tons of practical tips for reducing our risk of being victimized by fraudsters. And last but not least, we will hear from Deborah Berlin. She is the Executive Director of Project to Get Older Adults Online, or Project GOAL. Project GOAL works to promote the adoption of broadband for older adults and to advance technology applications for this community. Deborah is also the president of Consumer Policy Solutions, a firm focused on developing progressive policies for consumers in a competitive and innovative marketplace. As a national voice on the issues of aging and technology, broadband adoption, privacy, and telecom policy, Deborah has been a guest on radio and television programs and has been published in media sources across the country. Deborah's going to enlighten us on what older adults need to know to stay safe when they shop online, including the specific scams that target seniors and lots of tips for staying safe. Welcome, panel, and thank you for being on today. Melissa, you are up first. I'm going to advance to your first slide. Thank you for being here and welcome. Go ahead.
Thank you for including us in this
great event.
Appreciate being included. I'm going to essentially provide a background on some of the research that the Better Business Bureau has done, and I'm going to really take take some highlights and really connect them to some prevention tips for all of you. So I'm going to sort of set the stage on online shopping scams, and then I'll turn it over to John and Deborah, who are gonna really dig in on more other suggestions. So first, I'd like to go ahead and introduce you to the BBB Institute for Marketplace Trust on the next slide. BBB Institute is the charitable foundation of the International Association of Better Business Bureaus. As many of you know, BBB is a not-for-profit organization that seeks to build a trustworthy marketplace in which both consumers and businesses can safely interact and thrive. Unfortunately, we know that fraud impacts both individuals and businesses, which is why we do a lot of the work that we do at the Institute. We do a lot of research, which I'm going to share with you today. We also do a lot of consumer education programs with our network of BBBs serving communities throughout the United States and Canada. And the other thing I wanted to talk about is some of the tools that we create. So if we go to the next slide, one of the main tools that the Better Business Bureau has created for businesses and consumers is our BBB Scam Tracker platform. And we created this initially in 2015 to essentially allow people to report scams. And it allowed us to do a lot of really interesting research over the years, which I'll share some of that today. It provides really critical data on what's really going on, you know, what are the latest trends in terms of scams being reported and so forth, and what are the shifts over time that we need to be aware of to protect ourselves. This was rebuilt last year, and it was relaunched in November. So it's a brand new site. If you haven't been in there in a while, I encourage you to go check it out. The newer version allows you to search our database of scams so that you can find out if that email that you've received or that text that you've received, if anything like that has been reported. You can actually there's an advanced search that lets you search by email, lets you search by phone number, business name, and so forth. So you can really find out if the thing that you received that feels suspicious really is. And I wanted to point out that the things at the top here on the right, in the red circle there, we just recently launched a prevention guide, which includes quizzes that you can take to sort of understand if you can detect a scam or not. It has some great videos. It has an entire library of resources that the Better Business Bureau has been putting together for years. The other thing that's unique to this area is it has a risk calculator. So you can essentially go in, put in some of your, put in your age, put in your gender, put in where you live, and you can get an understanding of the scams that pose the biggest risk to you based on your demographic background. So that's available. The other thing, the recovery toolkit will be launched in a few weeks, and that is if for some reason you're impacted by a scam, you can actually go in there and get resources that will essentially address exactly what the impact of the scam is, whether it's identity theft, your device was compromised, your financial stability's been impacted, and so forth. So stay tuned for that. And then if we go to our next slide, I'm not going to dwell on this next slide. It's just a place where I'm going to provide a lot of highlights on data and then connect them to some prevention tips for all of you. All of the things, I'm not going to delve too deeply into this research. We have a lot of reports that we've published. All of them are free to download at our website if you're interested in learning more. I'm going to touch on a few things. So in the middle there, that middle report is the annual report we do every single year. I'm going to share a lot of data from that. That is our risk report. And that is essentially an annual report of what we're seeing in the marketplace in terms of scam trends and what are the riskiest scams for the year and so forth. And I'll share that in just a moment. Our most recent report on the left here is a new report we published 2 weeks ago. It's all about how scams are impacting young people, specifically ages 18 to 24. So if you go to the next slide, just to share some highlights from some of the data that we've been collecting, it's not a surprise to any of us to find out that BBB's essentially been publishing research on scams since 2015, which is when we first started collecting data through BBB Scam Tracker. We did a report, and we do reports also specifically on online scams. And our most recent online scams study showed that we have seen a rise of scams perpetrated online. They rose 87% from the time that we started collecting data through 2022. So not a surprise, right? We know that things changed, particularly during the pandemic when people were forced to go online and spend most of their time interacting and doing their shopping online. So it's not a surprise, but that's where we are today, right? People are online a lot more, and scammers are online as well, and which is why we're here to talk about that today. So if we can go to the next slide. The other thing to think about when we talk about the increase in terms of our time that we spend online, this table here is a really important one. First of all, it's important to know that you can see here that 76.3% of all scams reported with a monetary loss, meaning people lost money, were for people who reported that they were online. They were targeted online. The biggest percentage of all of the reports we got where people were perpetrated online were also online, 56.5%. The key finding here, and I don't want to dwell on this too much longer, is if you're targeted online, you're much more likely to lose money, which is why we need to take precautions while we're spending our time online, whether it's shopping or visiting social media or whatever. There's a lot of things we need to be cautious about during that time because it is riskier. And if you're targeted while you're online, you have a higher chance of actually losing money than if you are targeted by phone or in person. So if we go to the next slide, I mentioned our risk report that we do every single year. The next one that we will publish will be in March of next year. We're already starting to work on the report for this year. It will include all of the data for 2023, and it will be released in March 2024. This is our last risk report, and what we do every single year is we decide which scam types are riskiest for all consumers. We also break it down by demographic group, but this here is for everyone, all age groups, all different groups. So essentially what you're seeing here is that in 2022, from the data that was submitted, online purchase scams, and what I mean by that is online shopping scams, were the riskiest scam reported. And essentially, they've been in the top 3 of the riskiest scams reported since we began publishing the risk report. The key points I want to point out for you here is that what you're seeing here is that we have the highest percentage of all reports submitted are online shopping scams. So 31.9% of all scams submitted to us were online shopping scams. The other more alarming statistic is that susceptibility stat right there, 74%. So almost 3/4 of people who submitted an online purchase scam reported that they lost money. So it has a very high susceptibility. So not only are there a lot of them being reported to us, a huge percentage of people are reporting that they're losing money. And so that's where I wanted to just talk a little bit about that. If we could go to the next slide, please. It actually breaks down by age group on the next slide. And essentially, there we go. You can see that it is #1 riskiest for ages 35 to 64 if we break it down by age group, but every other age group it's in the top, it's #2 riskiest. So for ages 18 to 34, it's #2 riskiest, only behind employment scams, which actually had a bigger impact on young people in 2022. The only thing I would say about this is this is still an important topic for young people, because when we broke out online purchase scams just for ages 18 to 24, for example, we actually even had a higher susceptibility. So 81.4% of ages 18 to 24 reported losing money. So this particular scam type is having a huge impact on all age groups. So if you can go to the next slide, please. So some key sort of findings from some of the research reports that we've done that I wanted to share and provide some tips to go along with them. We do survey research every single year with all of our reports so that we get to dig in a little bit more on data and get a better understanding of actually what's happening. We did survey research to find out what was the top motivation, what was the thing that most propelled people to continue to engage with the person and then follow through with an online scam. In this case, it was for online scams. And sales price, meaning a really good price, was the #1 reason victims reported that they ended up moving ahead, buying that product, and then losing money. So a really key tip here is to just be aware of those really great prices, particularly things like going out of business sales with limited time offers, great prices. Just be aware of those and do your research before you take advantage of that incredible deal, because that's one of the things people are jumping quickly to take advantage of it. So just be aware. A couple other motives people reported were nice photos on the website, things that they really wanted, really attracted them to move forward and do it. Hard to find items as well. So hard to find items during the pandemic, for example, it was really hard to find the right masks. It was hard to get Clorox wipes, for example. And if you really searched hard, you could find them because the scammers were offering those products for you, of course, not delivering them. So if we go to the next slide, speaking about nice photos on a website, we also surveyed and found out from our data what were the top products being used by scammers to try to get people to pay them money. And by far the #1 product was pets. And you've probably all heard about pet scams. Across all age groups, pet scams were the #1 product that was used. So with a tip, if you're thinking about buying a pet or any kind of pet, do your research on it. Make sure it's a legitimate outfit. Try to see it before you buy it. Any upfront payments that's required, be very wary of it because there's just so many out there right now, everywhere. Other top products that that were reported to us: digital devices, motor vehicles was another one that scammers were offering. A lot of nutritional products, and there's a whole list in our report that I won't go into that you can see. If you go to the next slide. So I wanted to talk quickly about fake websites. Obviously for online shopping, it's really important that you're taking the time. If you end up at a website that you've never visited before, whether it be it's a great deal that you saw, or somebody, you saw it online and you were searching and it took you, if you've never been to the site before, take time to do research before you do anything. That was for online shopping scams, not a surprise. That was the most reported place people were losing money, of course. And then 72.1% reported losing money. The other thing I just want to say about websites is that even if it looks professional, and it's just remember that it doesn't take a whole lot to create a really professional looking website quickly. So it just because it's looks nice doesn't necessarily mean that it's not a fake website. So just be careful. We're seeing a lot of professional looking fake websites out there. The other thing, there's a lot of things we put in our tips pages on how to check to see if it's a legitimate website or not. Just do your research. Things, for example, find out how old the website is. If it's a newer website that's been launched in the last 6 months, just be very careful. Be very wary of a newer website. So if we go to the next slide, please. Another thing we saw in our research, again, won't be a surprise to a lot of you, is we were looking to try to understand, again, the percentage of people that were being targeted online. And you can see with the circle there in the middle of your screen, when we did our last online shopping scam report, 86% of people said that they were online when they were targeted. We found that a smaller percentage of people were being brought online in other ways, whether it be phone call, text, or whatever. But the majority of folks were actually being targeted while they were online. And you can see that the top thing that people reported was social media. A big share of them were actually on social media when they were targeted, whether it was a direct message or an ad that they saw. And then there was also a big share that were shopping online. That's not a surprise. Some checking email. Some 10% actually reported that they were using a search engine. So again, even if you're proactively searching using a search engine, you're going to potentially stumble upon, an offer that it isn't legitimate. And so even if you're the one that's actively searching, be very careful and do your research. But I think the key tip here is for social media, avoid making any quick purchases when you see something that pops up that looks great. Again, it's the same suggestion I provided on the website. Take your time to do research, particularly on third-party websites where it provides some really good data on whether or not it's legitimate or not. If we go to the next website, or the next slide, sorry. Text message is another thing that we're seeing in our research. In our latest risk report, we are seeing an increase in scams that are perpetrated via text message. In fact, we saw a 40% increase from 2021 to 2022. So they're out there. I expect to see that continue to increase, partially because the phone's in your hand. It's so easy to just respond very quickly to a text that you see pop up on your phone. It also has a very high median dollar loss. So people reported to us on average they were losing about $800 when they were targeted through a text message. So they can be, it can have a huge impact on you. It was also the #1 tactic people reported in terms of scammers, getting them to go online to take some sort of action. So again, a tip here, if you see any kind of unsolicited link coming through, whether it's pretending to be your bank or even if it feels like it's familiar, if it's unsolicited for any reason and it comes through your email or your text, do not click on it. Go ahead and find, go to the website. So if it's your bank, go to your bank directly. Do not click on the link. That is how a lot of scams are actually being perpetrated right now. So if we go to the next slide, reviews. I wanted to say something about reviews. On one of our most recent reports, we actually created a quiz for survey respondents to take to see if they could actually detect a fake review versus a real one, and whether people lost money or not. We found that overall survey respondents were unable to really tell the difference. And so I guess the tip here is just don't rely completely on reviews when you make a buying decision. Make sure you're backing it up. There are some platforms that are doing a lot of due diligence, and that's great. But if don't rely on social media comments or just reviews in general to make a decision. Make sure you do a little bit of additional research beyond that before you make a buying decision, particularly regarding a bigger product. So if you want to go to the next slide, please. One other thing that's to keep in mind that we see a lot in our research, payment method. So in other words, how you pay is really important. It will help to protect you. Those who paid with credit card were much less likely to lose money, and they were more likely to actually recover their funds if they were scammed. So the tip here is make sure that you think about the payment method that you use. So for example, gift cards, there's a lot of talk about don't use gift cards unless you know the person specifically that you're using. It's really hard to get money back from a gift card scam. The other one is digital payment apps. Just think about them, just be careful. It's great to use Venmo and Zelle because they're really great for convenience, but scammers are starting to ask for payment this way. So one tip for you to think about is think of your digital payment apps as cash. Would you pay somebody that you've never met online for a product with cash? You probably wouldn't. You would probably hesitate. And so just think about how you're paying so that you know that if for some reason it doesn't work out, you have a way to get your money back. Go to the next slide, please. Couple other things. We do this research every year with survey respondents, which is trying to find out what are the things that people who were targeted by a scam but were able to walk away without losing any money. What were the things that they felt helped them avoid losing money? And there's a lot of things on here. I won't go into all of them, but the top thing that comes back every year is that they felt something wasn't right about the situation. I just wanted to share that. Again, if something doesn't feel right, feel free to just end the engagement and walk away. There is nothing that can't wait another day or a couple hours for you to think about. So just listen to your gut. If something tells you it's not right, disengage and move away and talk to somebody about it. If you go to the last slide, or one of the last slides here, I'll wrap up. These are just, so there's very specific things to think about that I've highlighted based on our research. These are red flags. I won't spend a lot of time on them, but essentially just recapping some general things to think about when you're shopping online. If somebody, or you're talking to somebody online, if somebody's pressuring you to act quickly for any reason, that's a red flag. Just be really careful. If there is any kind of an offer that feels too good to be true, I can't believe they're offering, then hesitate, right? That's a red flag. If anybody's insisting that you pay a certain way, that they need you to go get gift cards, they're asking you to pay on another non-traceable method, again, that's a red flag. If you're getting any kind of unsolicited links sent to you, do not engage with them, don't click on them. And then another thing to just watch out for are those requests for upfront payments. So pet scams a lot of times come with, I need you to pay in advance before you can come see the pet. That's a huge red flag. So if you go to the next slide, I just wanted to say, in addition to our research, every one of our research reports has tips pages, and all of them highlights. They all highlight specific findings in our research with tips to go along with them. They're all available on our website. And I just want to say thank you for letting me speak today. If you go to the last slide, we will be taking questions at the very end. So if you have any for me, I'm happy to take them at the end. And I'm going to turn it over to John now. Thank you.
Thank you, Mel, for that great presentation. And I can't believe you talked about improving Scam Tracker. It was already wonderful. So I can't wait to check it out. Thanks so much.
Thank you.
Highly recommended for everyone. John, I'm going to go ahead and advance to your first slide. Thank you for being with us today.
Sure. Hi. Thanks. Good afternoon or good morning, everyone, depending on where you are tuning in from. I am John Brayo, as Nelson mentioned, and I am with the National Consumers League. If you're not familiar with NCL, we are a 124 years young consumer advocacy group based in Washington, D.C. And one of the things I do here at NCL is work with consumers to educate them about spotting frauds and scams. I've been doing this now for over 15 years, running NCL's fraud.org campaign, which if you're not familiar with fraud.org, it's a great resource where you can find all sorts of tips on how to spot and avoid all kinds of different scams, as well as file complaints that we share with a network of law enforcement and consumer protection partners. So thank you again to Consumer Action for inviting me to talk today. Nelson, if you can go ahead and advance to the next slide, I will do a little bit of agenda setting. What am I going to talk about today? First, we're going to look at some holiday shopping scam trends. Then we'll be talking a little bit about fake user reviews. Then we'll be having some tips on how to reduce your risk during the holiday shopping season. And then to reinforce that, we'll be talking about just some general cyber hygiene tips that you can use, whether you are shopping during the holidays or doing anything else online. And then finally, we'll close with some tips on how to make sure that all that personal information that you are sharing as you do holiday shopping and other activities online doesn't end up leading to identity fraud. So some of this will reinforce what Mel has talked about, but it's always great to have a little bit of a refresher, and we'll have plenty of new information to share as well. So Nelson, if you want to advance to the next slide. So just to set a baseline here, this probably won't come as a surprise, but almost all of us do some or all of our holiday shopping on the internet. 93%, according to Gallup, of us do our holiday shopping online. And that's based on surveys they did earlier this year. Only about 7% of people don't do any of their holiday shopping online. So most of us will be going on the web to do some shopping. So we can go on to the next slide. Unfortunately, scammers are also aware of this. They know that most of us are going to be looking for deals and have our credit cards out to try and snag gifts, toys, experiences to help make the holidays a little bit brighter. According to Norton LifeLock, about 36% of Americans report being targeted online by shopping scams during the holidays. And that is, I think, a very interesting statistic when you consider that people who are targeted are often, the ways that they get targeted vary significantly. We have some statistics here on where people were first exposed to a potential scam. And, I think one of the ways that people often get roped into these scams to begin with is because they are being offered sort of that hard to find gift or toy. Nearly 17% of adults, when given the opportunity, would give away personal information in order to obtain those high value gifts or toys. So as Mel said, when there's that urgency, when there's that thing, you're really afraid you're not going to get that PS5 for your child, and that ad on Facebook looks really good, think twice, because they are often after personal information as well as credit card information they can use to defraud you. So we can go on to the next slide. Briefly, I'm going to talk about fake reviews. This is another way that scammers are targeting consumers this holiday season. The estimates vary, so anywhere from 4 to 30% of the reviews that are online are fake. We see and rely on reviews to a great deal, everything from Amazon to Yelp to eBay to Shopify to Google. These are all platforms that host user reviews, and they have, unfortunately, because they are so effective in influencing our behavior, they have become a popular way for scammers to try and drive consumers' dollars to products and services that aren't worth your money. Unfortunately, according to the University of Baltimore, $28 billion per year in consumer spending is influenced by these fake reviews. And as I said, these are tremendously reviews are tremendously influential to consumers' buying decisions. So according to Bright Local, 77% of consumers say that they regularly consult reviews before making a purchase, and that 75% say that a positive review is a big factor in making them feel good about their business. I don't know about you, but I know I don't really buy anything on Amazon or any other platform until I've read the reviews. So I can certainly attest to that statistic from personal experience. So since there are so many of these reviews out there, and because of new technology coming out, it's becoming a bigger problem than ever. How do we spot the fake reviews? So if you go on to the next slide, we can give you some tips on how to do that. The one thing you should look for is how quickly the reviews for a product or service you are looking at appeared. So usually there's a timestamp on there that says when a review was posted. If you're seeing a lot of reviews in, say, the last 24 hours, the last 48 hours, that's often a red flag that something is amiss. Many of those reviews may use similar language. We know that there are sort of fake review farms out there that are organized by fake review brokers. And they often just want to get reviews out there and don't sort of give a whole lot of thought to making sure that they actually are different ones. So if you're seeing a lot of reviews that use similar language, like this is a great product, A++, never had a better product, that's the kind of thing that should be a red flag. People don't write like that. People tend to review to speak as the way that I'm speaking to you now, or that you're writing in an email to a friend, rather than sort of this like flowery language that you sometimes see in fake reviews. You can also review the reviewer. So most platforms that host user reviews, you can actually click on the name of the person who did that review. And so one of the things we're urging consumers to watch out for is what I call single review SAM. If when you click into that person's profile, you only see one review, then that can often be a sign that there's something amiss with the reviews. We know that fake review brokers often create hundreds or thousands of accounts on Google or other platforms for the sole purpose of putting up these fake reviews. So they'll post one review and then deactivate the account or go onto another account. So watch out for reviews written by people who are only doing one review. Social media influencers. Social media is definitely a place that more and more consumers are going to help them decide whether they want to buy a product. Unboxing videos are very big on YouTube. Plenty of people are on Instagram or TikTok talking about products that they've bought. Just know that those may not be impartial. Although they are supposed to disclose if they've received the product they're reviewing as a gift or they've been paid to review a product. That doesn't always happen, or it may happen sort of in fine print or at the very beginning of a video or the very end of a long video. And so, just know that just because somebody that you may find entertaining on social media is reviewing a product doesn't mean necessarily that it's a product that you should buy. Many platforms often offer the ability to see if someone is a verified purchaser. So when I say a verified purchaser, it's somebody who has actually bought the product that they are reviewing. And so different platforms do it in different ways, but normally there's some sort of check mark or other, or it says verified purchase next to the review. Well, that's not a 100% foolproof method to know that a review is authentic. It definitely is something that we encourage consumers to look for when they're evaluating whether a review is trustworthy or not. Unusual language may be a tip-off. We know that fake reviews are often written by people for whom English is not their first language. They may be located overseas. They may be using some sort of software bot to write the language for them. And so sort of grammar mistakes that you and I wouldn't make, or odd ways of structuring a sentence may be a tip-off that the review you're reading is not authentic. And then finally, I think Mel's advice earlier is great. If it sounds too good to be true, it probably is. Listen to your gut. If the review doesn't feel right, look elsewhere to decide if you want to get the product from that particular place you're shopping for, or if you want to get it from somewhere that might be a little bit more trustworthy. So Nelson, let's go on to the next slide, please. So regardless of where you decide to purchase or what product you decide to purchase, how you pay is a big factor in your risk of falling victim to fraud. And for most of us, when we're purchasing gifts or online these holidays, using a credit card is going to be the safest way to pay. They offer the most protections under the law. Under federal law, you have limited liability if the card is misused for unauthorized transactions. Most banks now offer zero fraud liability for credit cards. If your credit card does get misused and it's used to purchase products that you didn't order, and you dispute that transaction, the funds in your account won't be locked up while the bank investigates that fraud. So you'll be free to use your funds in your account while that is ongoing. And now I know many people either don't have the credit to get a credit card, or don't use credit cards out of choice, and so they choose to use debit cards. And you can certainly use debit cards when you're shopping online. Just know that they don't offer the same level of protections when it comes to fraud that a credit card does. For example, if you say somebody runs up $100 fraudulent charge on your debit card and you call to complain about it, those $100 will not be available to you while the bank is conducting its investigation. And if you need that money to do things like pay rent or other bills, you could be up a creek. So definitely, if you can use a credit card for your online transactions this holiday season, I would recommend that you do so. So let's go on to the next slide. So how do you actually dispute those fraudulent transactions when you see them? First of all, I would say make sure and check your account regularly. Most of us can do this online or through an app that our bank provides. I would say, a good rule of thumb is check it at least every week. If you can't do that, every 2 weeks or even every month is good. But make sure and check your account regularly. If you see transactions that you don't recognize, dispute them immediately. Under the federal law, you have a limited amount of time that you can dispute these transactions and still be covered. So don't wait. If you see something suspicious, call your bank immediately. Usually it's sometimes you can do this through their online websites and dispute a transaction, or you can look on the back of your credit card or debit card and use the number there to call your bank and dispute that transaction. If you do that, make sure and keep records of all your interactions with your bank. And so what I mean is that if you are calling up their 1-800 number to dispute a transaction, just on a piece of paper or create a document on your computer, note what time you called, what the name was of the person that you spoke with. If they have an employee number, what was the number of that employee? Summarize, what you remember about the conversation. If you had emails that you were sending back and forth with the bank, or chat messages that you're using, if you're going that way, when you are doing these disputes, make sure and keep a record of all those. Those can be helpful if the bank is resistant to try and resolve this dispute. And finally, no matter what you do, if somebody has misused your account or your credit card, that person is a criminal. They are committing a crime. And so definitely file a complaint. Not only can you file a complaint with my organization on our website, which is www.fraud.org, you can also file it directly with the Federal Trade Commission. And the website is on the screen here. It's reportfraud.ftc.gov. You can also go to your state attorney general. That's also another great place to report these types of scams. But regardless of who you use, the important thing is file a complaint. Not only does it create more records of this potential crime, but it also helps these agencies build trends, identify fraudsters, and hopefully put some of them behind bars. So let's go to the next slide. So I talked a few minutes ago about why credit cards are the best way to pay when you're shopping online this holiday season. And there are 4 methods to pay that I would definitely advise against when shopping online these holidays. The first is those peer-to-peer apps that Mel talked about, sort of the Venmos and PayPals and Cash Apps and Zelle. Those are apps that are perfectly fine for splitting a bar tab, or paying someone back if they're we use it for at our school when we're doing fundraisers for the kids. We'll pay people who buy supplies back through Venmo or something like that. What they're not good for is for buying things online from people that you don't know. So definitely avoid those peer-to-peer apps for shopping online. Don't use gift cards. Gift cards are what they sound like. They are for loading funds on and giving it to someone that you know, so that they can use it at Amazon or at Starbucks or anywhere else. Unfortunately, scammers want you to put money on gift cards and provide them the numbers off the back, which allows them to very quickly drain the funds from that gift card. So if someone's asking you to pay for something online with a gift card, that's a big red flag. I know this may seem funny to people, but definitely we get complaints where scammers that people interact with online ask for you to send good old-fashioned cash, put cash in an envelope, and mail it to them. That there's no reason that you should be paying for items online that you're buying online with cash. And then finally, watch out for scammers who want you to pay with some sort of cryptocurrency. For the vast majority of us, cryptocurrency is going to be something that we will maybe use if you're a savvy investor, but for the vast majority of consumers, we advise avoiding this, and certainly don't use it if you're being asked to pay with Bitcoin or something else, or Ethereum, or any of the other dozens of different cryptocurrencies out there. If you're being asked to pay for those for holiday gifts, that is also a big red flag. So we can go on to the next slide. And there's some reasons that all of these payment methods are risky: the peer-to-peer apps, the cryptocurrencies, cash, gift cards. All of them offer quick payment. The person that you are sending a peer-to-peer or a Venmo to, or that you're putting money on a gift card and providing the number off the back of that to someone, those funds can be available almost instantaneously to a scammer on the other end. There are currently few, if any, fraud protections in the law for funds that are lost through when you send money via those methods. And they're difficult to trace. Oftentimes, the people who are on the other end of those transactions may be overseas, they may be using accomplices, and it's really hard when we talk to law enforcement. They say it's really hard to trace these down. And so just a sort of little mnemonic device to help you remember, if they want you to pay a risky way, run away. So any of those 4 payment methods I talked about are really not good for your holiday gift purchases. So we've talked a little bit about how you can stay safer when you're shopping online during the holidays. But one of the things we often don't think about when we're shopping online is sort of all that information that we're providing as we are doing our holiday shopping. So if we can go to the next slide, we can talk a little bit about that. One of the things that Google did a survey a few years ago, and they asked sort of average everyday internet users, what do they think are the best habits that they can use to reduce their risk of being a victim of fraud online? And the top 5 things they said are there on your screen. It was things most of us sort of think about. These are sort of use an antivirus software, strong passwords, change your passwords, don't share personal information. But then they did the same survey with sort of cybersecurity experts. And while some of these were the same, like use a strong password, they have a number of different ones, like installing software updates, using unique passwords, not just strong passwords, 2-factor authentication using password managers. So we're going to spend a few minutes here just going through these 5 tips that experts have put out there on what you can do to reduce your risk. And when I say reduce, I want to emphasize that word. There is no 100% foolproof way to protect yourself from all scams online. But reducing your risk is something that most of us can do that will help us be able to shop in a more secure way online. So if we can go to the next slide, I'll talk a little bit about installing software updates. Most of us are familiar with those little notifications we get at the bottom of our computer screen or on our cell phone that urges you to install software updates. However, we know that about 50% of people, according to Kaspersky, which is a cybersecurity firm, just hit that remind me later button. And it's important that you install those software updates promptly. They are put out there for a reason. Scammers and hackers are always coming up with new ways and new exploits to try and insert malware or get around defenses that are put on your devices, like your laptops or your cell phones. And so keeping your software up to date is a very simple way to try and to make your devices more secure. Most of the time these updates can be installed in as little as a few minutes. And so it really is not a huge inconvenience to install them as soon as you get those notifications. And that's not just me talking. The cybersecurity agency of the federal government says that this is the most effective measure you can use to protect your computer, phone, and other digital devices like iPads or smartwatches or other tools that we have to help us in our everyday lives. So let's go on to the next slide. So unique passwords. There was some research that came out a few years ago from the University of Champaign-Urbana. They asked, they looked at how many accounts do most of us have on average, and the average was 130 accounts, which seems like a lot. But it's if you think about sort of all the times and all the websites that you go to over the years where you're asked to put in an email address and password combination in order to access it, whether it's a Google group or your bank or a social media platform, you can see how those add up very quickly. And that same, according to that same study, they found that 50% of web users were using the same email address and password combination across multiple sites. And so that is a big problem because what hackers will do very quickly is if they can figure out your email address and password combination for one account, they will very quickly, often using automated software, use that same combination of email address and password across lots of other platforms to try and figure out if you've reused it. And so if one account gets compromised and you're using that same password and email address combination, it can lead to a cascading series of account compromises. So when experts say use unique passwords, they mean use one password for each of those accounts. And so if we go to the next slide, we can talk about sort of the conundrum that creates. Who's got time to keep track of 130 unique passwords? Even if you write down each one on a piece of paper, you're very quickly going to run out of, have to go onto multiple pieces of paper just to keep track of all of them. So that's absolutely right. That is a pain to think about that. So what I recommend you do is prioritize. Number one, make sure that your primary email account, that means your personal and work email accounts, have unique passwords, ones that you aren't using for any other account anywhere. That's important because what often happens is that if a scammer can get into your email account, they will quickly start to use the forget password function on lots of other accounts. They'll get those those sort of change your password emails, and then start to use that to change passwords in other accounts that they want to compromise. So definitely your primary email account is one that's sort of the golden key that scammers are trying to get access to. So if you can use unique passwords for those accounts. Second, your bank and credit card accounts. Obviously, there is money at stake there. Scammers want access to those accounts so that they can do things like run up charges or start moving money out of your account into accounts that they control. Third, social networks. Most of us are familiar with Facebook, but Instagram, Twitter, others, those are sort of the third priority I would recommend. We see that scammers who can compromise your accounts on those social networks will very quickly start messaging all your friends to try and rope even more people into their scam. And then finally, make sure and use unique passwords on those e-commerce accounts that you're using for your holiday shopping. So eBay, Amazon, certainly if you're using PayPal or other sort of peer-to-peer payment apps, those are all ones to use unique passwords on. Another thing to do on those important ones, if we can move on to the next slide, is to use what's called two-factor authentication. This is a great way for you to add another layer of protection. So the basic concept is it's something you know plus something you have. So if we go on to the next slide, how does it work? Basically, if you are putting in your email address and password combination, that won't be all you'll need to put in order to access an account. So if you set up two-factor authentication, what'll happen is if you put in the email address and password, you will get a text message or be asked to provide some other form of authentication to show that you are who you say you are. And so you get a text message. The text message will say, please put in this code to log into your email or your bank account. You put that in, and then that's how you get into the account. More and more services now are requiring this by default, but if one that you use frequently doesn't already use it, look and see if there's a setting that you can turn on that would allow you to set up two-factor authentication. So if we go on to the next slide. We talked about unique passwords, we talked about two-factor authentication, but sort of how do you do that? How do you make sure that you have those unique passwords across all the accounts? This is just a word cloud of sort of the most popular passwords that are out there. And unsurprisingly, the most popular password is the word password, followed by 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Those are insecure. So rather than sort of reusing these passwords, the tip is to use strong passwords. So we go on to the next slide. Strong passwords are ones that are longer, 8 to 12 characters if possible, a mix of uppercase and lowercase letters, numbers and symbols, and avoid sort of those dictionary words. Hackers very quickly use dictionary words to try and brute force into your accounts. So if we move on to the next slide, Unfortunately, as I said, having to remember all those accounts isn't very easy. At most, I think according to researchers at Trinity College in Dublin, they said, the most we can really be expected to remember is 5 passwords. Unfortunately, we're also asked to know 5 passwords, 5 PINs, sort of 3 ID security numbers. You can see how that would become very quickly get overwhelming. So how do we deal with that? We go on to the next slide. If we can't be expected to remember all those 130 strong, unique passwords in our brain, are there tools that we can use to make sure that we're not falling back onto insecure habits like we're using easy to guess passwords? And this is where password managers come in. So if we go to the next slide, password managers are basically operate on the concept that one strong password can be stronger than 130 reusable passwords. And so password managers are usually plugins that you can put into your browser or apps on your phone. There are lots of different password manager companies out there. Many of them offer this service for free. LastPass, Dashlane, Google offers their own. Your iCloud account offers the same thing. These store all those passwords in one place. And all you have to do is remember the one master password. And then you put that in, and then these password managers will automatically populate your logins with sort of these strong, unique passwords when you're going in. So all you have to do is remember that one and let the password manager take care of all the others that you have to remember. So I'm going to advance quickly through the next 2 slides because we are rapidly running out of time here, and I think I've gone over. But let's say you've done all the things that I just talked about, using strong, unique passwords, setting up 2-factor authentication, installing your software updates. That's great. You've reduced your risk, but unfortunately, what happens is that you're feeling pretty secure. But if we move on to the next slide, we know that bad things still happen to good people. And so a few tips you can use to reduce your risk that when bad things happen, you can at least manage the fallout of that. So if you go to the next slide. Number 1, check your credit report regularly. We know that a lot of the information that the scammers get from data breaches or from hacking people's accounts, they quickly use to try and commit identity fraud. And that often results in new credit reports, new entries on your credit report as they try and do things like set up bank accounts and lines of credit. So make sure and check your credit report regularly. Those are the 3 main credit reporting agencies, and you can check that for free at annualcreditreport.com, and there's the number you can use to get access to those reports. We're on the next slide. Make sure that you put a fraud alert on your credit report. While this won't prevent someone from committing identity fraud against you or even opening lines of credit in your name, you will get a verification call. And so if someone tries to open a line in your name, they will call you and you can say that wasn't me. These are often free for ID theft victims or deployed active duty service members. For the most part, if you call all 3 of the credit agencies and said, I want to put a fraud alert on my credit report, they will do it without cost. Now, importantly, this won't protect you against misuse of existing accounts. So if you go on to tip number 3, what we're recommending more and more consumers do is consider a credit freeze. This is adds another layer of protection. Basically, in order to begin a line of credit, you will have to provide a PIN number in order to do that, with a PIN number to the credit agency. So it usually requires a phone call and 24 hours to unfreeze the account when you're applying for that credit. I think this is good for people who aren't sort of routinely opening new lines of credit, to go ahead and freeze your accounts. That can just add another layer of security. And finally, go to the next slide. To avoid old-fashioned identity theft, where they are literally raiding your mailboxes, opt out of those pre-approved credit and insurance offers. 888-5-OPT-OUT is the number you can use to do that. Also, optoutsprescreen.com is the website. In addition to reducing your risk of sort of those mailbox thieves. You also just get a little bit less junk mail, hopefully, if you do that. So just to recap, there are one of the last slide here. Online shopping during the holidays is very popular, but scammers are looking for you to give them presents too. You can take steps to reduce your risk, as I talked about: software updates, strong unique passwords, installing a password manager, enabling two-factor authentication, and then you can further reduce your risk by checking your credit report, taking advantage of fraud alerts and credit freezes, and then opting out of those pre-approved offers. So if we can advance 2 slides, we're going to take questions at the end, but there's my contact information. So thank you, and apologies, I think I went a little long here.
Thank you, John. That was wonderful. Thank you for such a thorough presentation. As everybody knows, this is a Train the Trainer, so you've given us a lot of information, and the information in your slides is something we can incorporate into our educational work. So thank you for that. We're going to move on to Deborah Berlin now. Deborah, thank you for being here today. I'm going to go ahead and advance to your first slide.
Thank you so much. It's a pleasure to be here, and I'm not sure if everyone's going to get off right now and change all their passwords, because I know I'm about to do that myself after this webinar. So thank you, John and Mel, for some great information. I will try not to repeat any of the great tips and tools. I want to provide a unique perspective, and thank you, Consumer Action, for having me join our colleagues today for this unique perspective that I'm going to provide on older adults and what they need to know to stay safe online, and why there is a unique perspective for this community. So I'm Deborah Berlin. I'm with Project Goal, which is the project to get older adults online. I work on aging and technology, promoting the adoption of broadband for the 65+ community. So let's move to the next slide. So what I want to show is why online shopping is a great benefit, and yet at the same time why we need to be particularly concerned with the older population. So first of all, internet use and broadband home adoption has significantly grown in recent years. So if we look at older adults 65+, there's been significant growth since the year 2017. I'm picking that year because we have some interesting statistics. So broadband at home was about 50% penetration in 2017, and about a year ago it was 64%. And these statistics are according to the Pew Research Center, which has some great stats. Internet use, 67% in 2017 and 75% in 2022. So the differentiation there is broadband at home versus internet use. Internet use is in our libraries, our social centers, perhaps in other Starbucks and stores and things like that, where you could have internet use versus in your home. So, during the pandemic years, 2020 to 2022 and up till now, we've had tremendous growth in terms of getting online for older adults, and we've seen the benefits of getting online as well. If we could go to the next slide, please. So overall, there were tremendous challenges of staying at home during the pandemic years that remain today. The benefits increased with those challenges of being online. And I know we're all familiar with many of those benefits of connecting with family and friends, of being able to communicate with our doctors, of having entertainment, receiving important community information, and finally online shopping. So older and adults have embraced online shopping during the pandemic years. If we could go to the next slide, please. So during the pandemic, online shopping increased with older adults, and during 2020, the number of digital buyers was 29%. So that was at the beginning of the pandemic, and that's the last actual stat we have, but we know that in the 3 years since that time, online shopping has greatly increased, and certainly during the pandemic years and to now, online shopping is something that older adults engage in every day, as our colleagues have shown. Next slide, please. So the important thing here is that while online shopping offers great benefits, it's very important that we also be aware of the latest safety tips to ensure that any of critical life savings that older adults have are not lost during any online transactions or aren't spent on sham or counterfeit products that my colleagues have referred to. And what I want to talk about for a moment is why the older adult population is perhaps targeted at times by fraudsters and scammers. So, much has been thought about with the older adult population. Okay, why is this a particular issue with older adults? Well, for one thing, older adults have considerable savings and that they have for their time and that they have worked and have, so there's considerable savings that is accessible. Number two, a number of older adults are isolated and they don't live with family members, so they're on their own. And finally, a number of them are new users of technology. So while they are online, they may not be as familiar with some of the tips and tools that we will be sharing and that my colleagues have referred to previously. So there's a number of issues that makes older adults more susceptible to some scammers. And buying tools are essential for this community in order to be more confident online. Let's go to the next one, please. So the 3 steps here are before making the purchase, when they're ready to buy, and then after shopping online to ensure ongoing protections. Given our time, I want to get to questions, so I'm not going to repeat some of the things that my colleagues have mentioned. So let's go to the next one, please. Really important for individuals to use an online shopping store that is trusted. And I think Mel referred to that previously, to ensure that you're on a site that is familiar and to be careful not to use or click on a store that is unfamiliar. When you're shopping, protecting your privacy and security. We've talked about that, to brush up on the latest privacy and security settings for all of your devices, and enable your cookie choices, clear your browser history to avoid getting additional unwanted marketing from companies. Those are all helpful tips. My colleagues talked about fake reviews already, so I won't go into that in any detail. There was a great article just today in online in the New York Times that I've got the site to here that has some additional resources about fake reviews. As both of my colleagues mentioned, you're going to see fake reviews online. It's an ongoing issue, but reviews are a very helpful tool when shopping online. So consumers are going to need to be savvy when they are looking online and shopping to be able to weed those out. The next slide, please. So shopping to avoid counterfeit items. This is another issue online for all of us to be aware of, that the online marketplace has included counterfeit items, and shopkeepers are working hard to eliminate those. Online retailers have worked to expand anti-counterfeit strategies and eliminate fake goods from their sites using new tools. So that's been an activity that we're working hard on an ongoing basis, and also have been using artificial intelligence tools to enhance their ability to address suspicious or harmful seller behavior. So retailers have been working very hard to eliminate counterfeit items online, but that has been an issue in the marketplace as well. Next slide, please. I think we have gone through this, so let's go on to the next one. All right, so let's talk about older adults online and shopping. And so what are some of the scams that are particularly targeted towards older adults that you may or may not have heard about? Grandparent scams, romance scams, government agency scams. These are some that are particularly targeted towards older adults. And there's a substantial amount of money that is lost by older individuals in these scams. For example, with romance scams, in 2020, $139 million from those 60 and older was lost in romance scams alone. And for those 70 years and older, the median loss from romance scams was $9,000 compared to $2,400 for all other age groups. So romance scams are a real problem. The issue are complex, but why is this an issue for older individuals? Well, although anyone can be targeted by scammers, there are several factors that put older individuals, and particularly older women, at higher risk. Women live longer and they are more isolated and lonely and looking for romance online, and often run into the scams that are out there. Government agency scams are another one to look out for online for older adults. Scams from that look like social security agencies contacting them, the IRS. So these are scams that particularly target older adults. We can go on to the next one. So scams to look for both during and after your online shopping transaction. One that's of particular concern for all individuals, but older adults need to be aware of. The phishing, and not to be confused with the one with a pole and a hook, and then a more sophisticated impersonation scams are out there and are of concern for our older individuals. So for those of you who may not be familiar with these, impersonation scams are the scams where you may get an email looking like it's from a familiar source. It might be from your bank, looks like it's from your bank or someone that you do business with. And the email looks like it's from that agency or from that company that you do business with, but it's not. And it's asking you for some information to verify something, and they'll say that you need to verify something in your bank account to click on a site, and it's not. And what they're looking for is to capture your social security number, your bank account number, or other personal information. And so, a tip to check is to check the address carefully, and usually there is some misspelling in the email address from the source that's sending it. The impersonation scams are a little bit more sophisticated, but they are similar in nature, where they are impersonating another company that you are actually doing business with, such as Amazon, saying, hey, we have your delivery and there's a problem with sending it to you. You ordered something and we can't deliver it. So please click on here so we can verify your address and we'll get that delivery right to you. And, you know, they're sending that out there hoping that you've ordered something, which is, you know, probably 75% of the people out there have ordered something that day from Amazon and think, oh my goodness, yeah, my order hasn't come yet. Maybe there is something wrong. So I'll click on here and check it out. Next slide, please. So now scammers are using new technology to even be more sophisticated in how they can get your money and get your personal information using new technology, using artificial intelligence. So while there are great benefits to artificial intelligence, it also is now being used by those who want to scam you out of your money. Unfortunately, scammers are able to gather money from your online information and from online information of your loved ones to actually mimic their voices. So you may have heard over the years of they're being able to make phone calls, robocalls, and say that, you know, your nephew is in jail and needs money right away. Well, now they're being able to use artificial intelligence to actually accurately mimic the voice of a loved one and convince older individuals that a family member is in distress and needs money. And they have actually been able to extract thousands and thousands of dollars in cash by using that information from online social media sites and transactions, and then creating calls that sound exactly like the voice of a loved one, calling to say, hey, grandma, I just had a car accident and I hit someone, and that person is going to press charges unless I immediately give them $10,000 in cash. I'm sending their lawyer to our front door, to your front door right now. Please, you know, go to the bank, get the $10,000, but don't tell my parents. It'll be too embarrassing. And this has worked. And it's really scary. And the Federal Communications Commission is looking into this use of this technology now to try and see what we can do to help regulate this. But this is going on using that new technology. Next slide, please. Other holiday scams that are new, that are happening and we expect to grow this year. And, you know, just in the holiday time, in the days leading up to Black Friday, scams increase, and we know those different scammers are trying new and different ways to extract money. In the days leading up to Black Friday last year, for example, scams reported by Amazon customers in the US nearly doubled. And during the same day period, text messages were most frequently reported as the method used by bad actors, and those nearly tripled. So, you know, what are some of the new shopping scams? One is using email attachments as a scam. Scammers send emails posing as Amazon perhaps, and including an attachment stating that your account will be suspended or on hold. and then they prompt you to click on a fraudulent link to update your account information. So consumers need to be very careful not to respond to those and not to click on anything. Another one is a Prime membership scam, where a customer may get something that looks very authentic about their Prime membership that refers to their membership fees and that they need to do something with their membership, provide payment or bank account information right away, and they need to respond to it. Again, these are scams, and consumers need to know that they should not provide any payment information in response to unsolicited emails like this. Emails, calls, or texts that could be coming through during this holiday season. Next slide, please. I know we want to get to a couple questions, so very quickly, my colleagues have mentioned reporting scams is critically important, as John mentioned. It's great that they should be able to keep track of them. So reporting any scams to the FTC, to your state attorney general, and your state's consumer protection agency will go a long way to helping to stop scammers. Next slide, please. Thanks, and I've included my website here, which has some more information, tips and tools. So thank you very much, and look forward to questions.
Thank you, Debbie and Mel and John, for your great presentations. Now we want to hear from our attendees today. I'm sure they have a lot of questions. Anna will be leading us in the discussion with questions. Anna, are you there?
I'm here, Nelson. Thank you to Mel, John, and Debbie for these wonderful presentations. A little bit scary, but you provided a lot of great information that we can all use. I have a couple questions for you here. Let's start with one that we just got. And I'm going to address this one to Debbie, but feel free for the others to jump in. So are scams that are taking away individuals' life savings, say for older adults, are they more common in the US? I don't know if you have any data on that. And if so, what policy changes would help so that it's not up to older consumers to have to be savvy and keep up with the scammers are doing, because elders have so much to worry about on their own?
Thank you. That's a great question. And I will start out by saying that a number of those who are committing the scams are actually not in the US. So, you know, we have a number that is one of the greatest challenges for stopping these scams. So I'll start out with that point. I don't have statistics on how the US compares to other countries, and I don't know if any of my colleagues do. But that is a good stat for me to look up, and I will definitely do that. But I know one of the greatest challenges of stopping these scams is the fact that they don't originate. A lot of the scammers do not originate or reside in the United States, and that's one of the greatest challenges that we have in stopping them. I think our regulatory agencies have been working hard alongside of the industry to stop and do what they can to eliminate, you know, scamming and fraud. But one of the issues is, you know, some of these scamsters or fraudsters are not in the United States.
Yeah, and I'll chime in here. This is John. You know, we know that scammers target people across the world. Certainly, if there are targets there who have money or information that the scammers can use or get access to, they will go after them. You know, just thinking in terms of Japan, for example, not a place you often think of as a hotbed of fraud, but it is a country that has a very large and growing population of seniors. And so there have been reports that Japan is now a place that is being targeted by a lot of these impersonation schemes. for example. And so scammers who are, as Debbie mentioned, overseas are looking for people who can speak Japanese. We see a lot of the same scams that we hear about in the US, in the UK, for example, and other English-speaking countries. So there isn't, I wouldn't say that there's necessarily one country that is more or less vulnerable than we are. Everybody is vulnerable to fraud. In terms of answering the question about policy, unfortunately, there is not one silver bullet policy solution to address the problem sort of scammers stealing people's life savings. There are lots of ways that agencies and the groups, including the ones who I think are represented on this call, are looking to folks in Congress and elsewhere to take steps to better protect us, because you're right, sort of putting all the onus on consumers themselves to spot and avoid these scams is a recipe for, unfortunately, more people being scammed, not less. Some of the ideas that have been put out there have been making banks, for example, more responsible when scammers send money through some of these peer-to-peer payment apps or via gift card to scammers. So you would have the same protections as on sort of Venmo that you would have if somebody got a hold of your credit card and ran up a bunch of charges. Certainly there have been a lot of work and a lot of legislating done to try and get a handle on robotexts and robocalls, because those are sort of big vector for fraud. And certainly there is always more resources that can be provided to folks in our enforcement agencies like the Federal Trade Commission, state attorneys general, to help them do their jobs better. And I'll say one more thing too about this. There's an effort that I think I know that my group has been involved in. I know AARP has been very involved in this, and I think Mel and I and Debbie have sat in many of the same meetings where we've discussed this, sort of changing how we talk about fraud. Unfortunately, fraud is a incredibly underreported crime in our country because we often blame the victims in this. We just, in the very language we use to talk about fraud, we talk about people falling for scams. We know that the people who are victims of these crimes often blame themselves or worry about the ramifications of what will happen if they report it, either in terms of, particularly with older adults, loss of independence, or no one will believe them. And so that's a problem. And scammers take advantage of this to say, nobody will believe you, don't tell anybody what's going on. This trickles down into the resources and the priority that fraud gets at enforcement agencies. So sorry, you might not have expected such a long answer to that simple question, but it really is a multifaceted problem with no one single solution.
Great, thanks for that. One question, I'm going to wrap it into two. John, you had mentioned the password managers as a system that might be able to help you secure your 130 or so passwords. How safe are they? Can we trust these password managers, and are they usually available for free?
So, there is, as I've said during my presentation, there's no 100% safe solution. Certainly using a password manager comes with its own risks. I would say, you have to balance those risks against the risks of sort of reusing the same password across all those 130 accounts. And so it's really a risk versus reward kind of calculation. Certainly not all the password manager companies out there are created equally. Some of them themselves have been victims of data breaches. So like I said, it's not a 100% solution, but it is a way to reduce your risk. In terms of how you can, if they're for free or paid, both types exist. Some of them are a mixture of one or both. So I use LastPass. I don't mind saying that. And it's worked well for me, but also other ones are out there like the iCloud keychain and things like that are very good as well. I would definitely say that no matter which password manager you decide to use, make sure that the password you choose, the master password, is a unique password, a long and strong one, and absolutely set up two-factor authentication. Most of the password manager programs I'm familiar with already require you to do that, but if they don't already, make sure and set up that two-factor authentication so that that one master password is as protected as it can be.
Okay, great. We have time for one more question. I'm going to direct it at Mel. There was a question about what does the Better Business Bureau do to prevent fake reviews on their own site? What can we do as consumers to guard against fake reviews?
Yeah, that's a great question. I'm less familiar and involved with our reviews, but I do know that BBB has a very strict policy on reviews that are put on the websites, and I think they're one of the more trusted places you can go to look at reviews. So they are looked at. They aren't just allowed to just be put up there. They're reviewed by our teams before they go online by the local BBBs. I think John actually did a great job of outlining things to think about when you're looking at reviews. But I would say take his advice. There's things like if there's when you look at them and you can see lots of positive things happening all at once, that's the red flag. My big message that I said, and I think, is just don't base your decisions solely on reviews. Look at some other things. There's other third-party places you can go to get additional information before you make a major buy, especially a major buying decision. Take some time, do some research. Definitely don't rely solely on reviews. And then the other piece I mentioned was the social media comments. Again, those can also be fake, right? It looks like people are just coming in, but those can be faked as well. And so whenever you're making an important purchase, just take time and know that there are fake reviews. Sometimes you're going to be able to look and maybe detect them, but it's really hard. We quizzed folks on this and found that people, even the folks who were able to avoid losing money to scams, couldn't tell the difference. So I would just say, know that they're out there, and just be aware and make sure that you're looking at everything and doing some additional research before you make a final decision. Yeah.
Thanks, Mel, and thanks to John and Debbie. Sorry we're a little over time, but thank you so much. I'm going to turn it over back to Nelson for some closing remarks.
Thank you, Anna, and thank you to the presenters. We just want to make a couple more points before we go, and that's that, Consumer Action is a nonprofit, and we certainly appreciate everyone's support. If you are interested in making a contribution, this information is on our website here, and you will, on our slides here, and we will get you these slides as well, so you can get all the links that were provided today. You can also support us by subscribing to our YouTube channel and following us on social media. The information is here. And again, we will get this to you within a week, along with a link to the recording and then the information on the continuing education units. Thank you again to all the speakers. Thank you to the attendees who joined us today and took time out of your day to participate. Watch your inbox. We have several events coming up, and we look forward to seeing you the next time. Thank you so much. Goodbye.